Welcome to Cape Town. Now, throughout this series of reports, one of the themes I've been exploring is the idea that ordinary people can take the power back from dodgy politicians and the corporations who back them, or from dictators and the empires who back them, by taking to the streets, going on strike, and ultimately by having a revolution. Now, since the last report, there have been two revolutions that have taken place. The first was in Tunisia, which led to the overthrowing of the autocrat or dictator Ben Ali. And the second, very significantly, has been in Egypt, which has led to the overthrowing, or the imminent overthrowing, of the US-backed autocrat Hosni Mubarak. I say imminent because in just the last few days, Mubarak has managed to get some of his thugs on the streets in an attempt to mount a counter-revolution. Today is a very important day because the Egyptians are taking to the streets once again, and all across the world there are rallies and demonstrations in solidarity with the ordinary people of Egypt. I'm off to a rally in solidarity with the people of Egypt here in Cape Town. Now, I'm particularly excited to be going to this rally because I've been invited to it by Ronnie Kasrils, who was one of the leading figures in the fight against apartheid here in South Africa. He became a prominent figure in the ANC government as well as the South African Communist Party, and back in the bad old days of apartheid, Ronnie was also one of the leaders of MK, the armed wing of the ANC. So here I am, I found Ronnie. Democracy there.
I think it's a tremendous beacon of hope and inspiration. Just a shift in the rule in Egypt, away from being a puppet of America, away from this dictatorship, being more sensitive to the need for justice, its own people's aspirations and those of the region and the Palestinians. Just a shift can bring about an end to the disgraceful way in which Gaza is enclosed on the Egyptian side. They could have lifted that blockade as they should have. So I think that might be one of the first gains for the Palestinians. The Palestinians are realizing this. And it'll be more for the Palestinians. People in Israel will have to start thinking very seriously about realizing they must be a Middle Eastern people. They can't rely on America, because I had said this to so many Zionists in argument and debate, that don't rely on the Americans. A time will come when your interests won't coincide with theirs and they will drop you. And what people are seeing is that their long-serving ally, Mubarak, is being dropped like a hot potato by them now.
You mentioned Israel, and I know that you're outspoken about Palestine and Israel. As one of the leading opponents of apartheid here in South Africa, do you think it's appropriate to call Israel an apartheid state?
Very. Everything I've seen about Israel, I see the parallels. And of course, we don't do this just for rhetoric. The similarities, of course, are really there for any South African to see. It doesn't mean it's the exact same, a duplication, but apartheid can show its face, racial domination and a division of people, including according to race, with a dominant racial group. It can happen in various forms. Sure. And we see this apartheid model being duplicated in the way the Israeli rulers, the way Zionism has run the situation there, how it exerts its power, how it's created a settler colony with the dispossession of the indigenous Palestinian people, and then in many different ways has created segregation of a very cruel kind, and it's legalized in many ways. They try to boast that it's a democracy. They try to claim that it's not like apartheid because the Palestinian people have rights. This is an absolute camouflage. It's a screen over what the real situation is for the Palestinians living within Israel, so-called citizens of Israel, as well as, of course, the occupied West Bank and beleaguered Gaza. And it's no revolutionary who said that what he saw on the West Bank as being apartheid, and that's former President Carter, and he's perfectly right.
And of course Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
Without a doubt, and he's a very genuine, sincere Christian of the best kind. Everything that is said by the likes of him and many others who are appalled by the injustice meted out by Israel against the Palestinians say that this is a distortion of Judaism, and it's against the actual long-term interests and security of the Jewish people of the Middle East, of Israel itself, in the same way that apartheid in the long run was against the interests of white South Africans. And in freedom and democracy in South Africa, they feel liberated themselves.
So, Ronnie, one last question about South Africa. I've already mentioned that you were one of the leaders of the fight against apartheid. That fight ended in victory. Has South Africa changed in the post-apartheid years in the ways that you had hoped?
Well, not enough, and not as much as I would have liked to have seen. But then we can't be unrealistic in expecting that a country like South Africa could have been changed overnight. I'm referring here to the poverty that we still have. That can take time to eradicate. The government could have done much more, and quite frankly, as a cabinet minister, I was saying this in Mbeki's cabinet, that we really need to speed up the distribution to our people. But we were paying off the apartheid debt. South Africa was striving to find itself in a new world post the Soviet bloc after the collapse. And you know, you've got to trade with the world. You can't be isolated. You've got to find your place in this. So this is where one accepted that we couldn't have a red revolution overnight in the circumstances in which we came to power as well, which was through a great deal of compromise and reconciliation. But you see, when you have a struggle for national liberation and then you win that freedom, that independence, there's going to be a struggle again for the kind of social system, whether it's going to be socialism, whether it's going to be capitalism, whether it's going to be a mixed economy. And those are the tensions that one is still seeing in the political system in this country. Certainly this upsurge, these uprisings in Arab countries, they are coming to the fore and they're showing what the future can be. So I'm very optimistic. The world cannot live under these contradictions in which out of 6 billion, 5 billion are living in poverty and hunger. And of that 1 billion, it's a tenth of them that actually are ruling the roost and consuming to such incredible degrees of greed and giving, you know, as a reflection of the kind of exploitation on this mass scale taking place in the world, and what this is doing to the planet, death to the planet, to the environment, and so on. It's people's movements everywhere, popular revolt of the people that's putting an end to it. Who would have normally thought, I'm not talking about people like us who are enlightened, who would never have had a perception of Arabs as being backward, but if you're thinking of the West, that the general view of Arabs is that, you know, these are backward people. We've seen in the streets of Cairo how enlightened and sophisticated the masses are of Cairo and Egypt and Tunisia, and with it their political consciousness, their consciousness about what is right, justice. In this sense, they're showing the way, they're leading, they're inspiring everybody. I'm greatly inspired by this.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Okay.